Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Secrets of a Witch podcast with me, your host, the creator of this show, the only person who talks on it, Sabrina Scott. And if you guys don't know me, just to reintroduce myself to anyone who is maybe new here, I am a professional witch and tarot reader, and I have been doing witchcraft and reading cards and engaging in mediumship and energy work for more than 25 years now, which feels crazy to say out loud. Like, that sounds like a really big number, but I'm getting older. I remember at the start of my career more publicly doing this type of stuff, I remember saying, oh yeah, I've been a witch and blah, blah, blah for 10 years or whatever it was, and now it's just like, oh my god, the time is flying. On this show, I talk a lot about life, love, witchcraft, magic, energy work, divination, mediumship, healing, trauma, self-help related topics. My whole thing is to help people kind of just grab the reins of their life and make it way better than they ever thought it could be. I think a lot of people live way too small. I think a lot of people give up before they even try or start something. And a lot of people, women especially, will sell themselves very short. And it breaks my heart and pisses me off. And so a lot of my work and my career and my content is all about helping people connect with that fire inside themselves and helping just be that wind in people's sails, the encouragement that people didn't know they needed. And I'm not going to share my whole life story right now, but I've been through some things and I've been through it and lived to tell the tale. And what I've overcome is there's a whole big laundry list, but suffice it to say, like, I also want to be that beacon of hope for anyone who is still struggling very deeply with something, whether that is in the recent past or ancient past or whatever. So that is really, really important to me in all that I do. So welcome. Happy April, you guys. I am really excited about this month. I think the vibe is very interesting. It's a very uplifting, refreshing, changey vibe, I would say. It's hitting me in a very spring cleaning kind of way, a very declutter kind of way. And we have got Mercury retrograde ending already, and what else ended? Venus retrograde also ended, and so we are kind of done with that very interesting reflection period, and we are ready to take action and to begin to catapult ourselves into something else, something different, something new. And this could be a return to something that we've done before, a person that we've been in the past, but much more likely it's kind of a combination of both, right? Folding that person that we used to be back into ourselves and getting rid of that part of ourselves that no longer serves us. Perhaps it was a coping mechanism that we learned in childhood that no longer is really relevant to our contemporary moment. So a lot of very important personal alchemical stuff is going on for us collectively this month. And if you missed the tarot reading for the month ahead over on YouTube, go do check that out. My YouTube is youtube.com/Sabrina Scott. Just look it up, Sabrina Scott April Tarot 2025, and it should pop up. If not, send me a hello and I will get that sorted for you. Check it out. A lot of vibes moving. And what else? I guess I wanted to say a little quick update on my Kickstarter for my next graphic novel, my 4th book, which is called Body Magic. I'm super excited. So despite a few delays with personal illness on my end and then an illness on the side of my printer and then just some craziness about tariffs and just, I don't know, craziness, finally the book is with the printer. So I sent everything off and I'm not too sure what the delivery date will be. I'm just kind of letting him do his thing and trusting that's all going to be fine, as I've worked with this person before, and so I'm really not worried about it. So I'm not someone who tends to micromanage other experts and people who I know I can trust to do a really amazing job, so I'm just letting him do his thing. And if you guys do want a copy of the book in risograph edition, which is to say a hand-printed edition that it's exciting. If you don't know what risograph is, look it up. The first ever 2,000 copies of Witchbody that I did when I was self-publishing it, that was a risograph edition. And so what's really interesting about it is it's kind of like a mix between Xerox and screen printing. So it will come off on your fingertips as you hold it, but not like so much that you're going to be super fucked up for the rest of the day. The point of the risograph, at least for me philosophically, is it shows you your relationship to the book as you read it. And it reveals to you where you've been, the paths that you've spent a lot of time, etc., etc. And obviously for the themes in Witchbody, that really made a lot of sense. And if you guys haven't read it yet, you absolutely should. Not to toot my own horn, but it has become a lot of people's favorite introduction to a type of witchcraft that you don't often hear talked about, by which I mean a very lived-in, urban, animistic, curious, alive form of witchcraft. So do go check that out. Body magic is obviously about something very different, and I don't really want to get into it right now because then I'll just get distracted. That's not really what I want this episode to be about, but I'm sure as the book starts to get closer to release day, I will be talking a lot more about it. So stay tuned. But all that to say, the gears are moving on that project. I'm super, super excited. I honestly can't even believe that this project I've been working on since 2018 really, is finally going to be birthed this year. It feels almost surreal. And if you do want a copy, go check it out. Just look up Body Magic on Kickstarter at one word, and you can still pledge and get a copy of the book. Obviously, it'll be a little bit more expensive than the first pledgers, but you can still get it. I think there's about 70 copies that are not accounted for. So you're going to want to grab that sooner rather than later if that is something that you would like to add to your collection. Okay, so there's some of the housekeeping stuff, and today I wanted to talk about a completely different topic than any of that stuff, which is the importance of curiosity, and how I feel that we are in this culture right now where there is this disturbing lack of curiosity. I almost feel like curiosity has died. Not to be overly dramatic, but it does really feel like curiosity is dead. Like, it feels so much to me that so many people, not everyone, obviously, I'm sure you guys are all very lovely, curious folks, but by and large, so many people just seem to have completely thrown curiosity out the window. And I think this is horrible. It's one of the worst things that any of us can ever do. Other than integrity, I would say curiosity is probably one of my top values in myself, and also what I look for in other people, whether they are dates, clients, friends, whatever. And so let's break this down. What even has got me rambling about this? So I'm sure y'all have noticed, regardless of wherever you are in the world, but particularly if you're in North America, which I think most of you are. Hopefully this isn't the case as much in other countries. Honestly, I think it's horrible. But in North America, at least right now, it seems like there is this massive lack of curiosity, especially across political difference. And don't worry, I'm not going to go off on any kind of political rambles right now. I'm speaking more about the structure of people's thought and how important curiosity is to the structure of thought, intellectual growth, and healthy interpersonal relating across any type of relationship. Again, whether it's professional, romantic, friendship, family, whatever. Curiosity is so important. And so what I tend to see online, and I'm not going to get too into the weeds here, but what I've seen, at least here in Canada, we've got an election coming up in a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that, which is crazy. I'm pretty excited. But what we see a lot is, some people will say, oh, you're voting for blah, 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 fill in the blank. Therefore, we can't talk, or I can't be friends with you, or therefore you're an evil whatever, fill in the blank, and people go off on their little ramble. There's a few local Facebook groups I'm in my neck of the woods in Toronto, and the arguments I've seen on these groups is mind-blowing, but also not mind-blowing because it's incredibly common. And this type of behavior has become so common that people just feel entitled to it and entitled to behave in a way that personally I find incredibly adolescent. And so, just to use an example, there was this one post that I saw where someone was complaining about having a conservative sign on their lawn, and it was defaced. It was basically graffitied with some very hateful language. And so this person was basically saying like, hey, this sucks, and if anyone knows who did this, like, please let me know. And so predictably, there was a bunch of people who seemed to be, honestly, like people in their early 20s who seemed incredibly arrogant, and no disrespect to anyone in their early 20s listening to this. I'm sure I was probably very arrogant when I was in my early 20s. So I get it. It's like a life cycle thing. Like it's cool. It's fine. No judgment. But it's interesting that these folks just went on these very long tirades. And what I noticed about the tirades, one of which was directed at me because I kind of stood up for the person with the sign and said, yeah, I would love to put up a sign, but I don't really want to position myself as a target for any kind of vandalism or violence or anything like that. So I'm going to be a wimp and not put up a sign, to be honest. Like, that's kind of where I'm at with it. As much as I would love to put up a sign, for anyone who is curious, I am voting conservative. But anyway, what was really interesting to me is I got all of these hate messages from these youngsters, and a lot of them were just making all these really horrible assumptions about me and how much of a horrible person I am, and, you know, how I must think this and how my identity must be that and how I must not know any queer people and how blah, 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 blah. And I found it so interesting just to take those 10 steps back and be like, wow, this person is making all of these assumptions about me, and I am actually queer, believe it or not. I'm sure you guys who've been here for a long time will know. And so I just found that really interesting, you know, and I'm sure whoever was graffitiing that person's sign made very similar assumptions about who that person was. I think it was a gentleman. Like, people made assumptions about who he was based on his sign. I think that is just really not fair either way. And so as I engaged with this person who was talking shit, what's really struck me is they didn't ask me any questions. And these people often don't, right? Which I find so interesting. And if you get into an argument with any of these folks, I would really just recommend asking questions. Like, why do you think that? If you were on one side, now you're on the other side. What happened? What changed for you? Like, what did you learn that inspired you to switch your perspective? Or, like, if someone asked me, like, hey, I understand that you're queer, why are you conservative? I'd be happy to explain it. You know, sure, I can answer that. Like, I think there's a lot of assumptions that happen when people think that queers can't be conservative. Like, newsflash, a lot of gay and lesbian and bisexual and queer people actually are conservative. It's totally way more widespread than people think it is, or at least people on the left think it is. And I find this fascinating. But again, back to my main point, because I don't want to get in the weeds here, is what I notice in a lot of these debates and discussions is a lot of folks are just making assumptions about each other. They have abstracted each other into symbols, and then they just argue at this kind of straw man symbol that they've constructed out of thin air or stereotypes or whatever. And instead of actually having an open-minded, open-hearted, curious, emotionally sober conversation between two people where the objective is to understand more thoroughly each other's perspectives, in my opinion, that should be how we do things as a default. Instead of that, what I've observed is just a ton of just like shit talking and a lack of curiosity and an assumption that the person arguing is the one who knows everything, is right about everything, yada, yada, yada. And this is really unfortunate. And I've read a lot about a lot of things. That's why I have the politics that I do and the opinions that I do. And if you don't agree with me, that's cool. I really don't mind. But a lot of what I've read has resulted in me changing my mind about certain things. And guess what? I'm open to the idea that I could still change my mind in the future, because I know there's a lot that I don't know about a lot of things. And I actually think that's very exciting. Like, I'm really excited to learn more all the time. I always am like, what more can I find out? I'm one of the things I'm most frustrated about, and one of the things I'm sad that I'm not immortal or can't be immortal. And I've always felt this way. And the saddest thing for me about this is I can't learn everything there is to learn, which is so depressing to me. It's the only thing that bums me out if I think about it. Like, usually I'm pretty peppy, but I'm like, damn, I can't be immortal and learn everything. That is so lame. And all of this to say, it's really important to value knowledge, curiosity, and growth. When we're curious, we're going to learn something. It might be something we wish we didn't know. Maybe it's something we don't like the fact that we know it, because it forces us to question our own beliefs. Maybe, there's so many different ways we can react to learning new information. But I do think it is so crucial to maintain our sense of curiosity, even if, and especially if and when, we feel we've come to the correct answer. It's so important. Otherwise, I think people just end up being like smug dickheads, and that's not cute. You know what I mean? It just isn't. And what I notice about a lot of folks on the left, bless y'all, if any of you guys are still here, I still love you guys. But one thing I do notice is a lot of the rhetorical style does tend to be very emotional. It does tend to be trying to rile people up. Like, oh, you are just a genocide supporter. You're just someone who doesn't believe in human rights. You don't deserve blah, blah, blah. And people will just go crazy rather than being curious. Because I think people do feel great when they feel like they have the moral high ground. They feel self-righteous, they feel prideful, they feel confident. And, that might be great to feel that way, but I actually think it's way more interesting, way more useful, and also way more truthful if we are curious to learn more information. And maybe we think that the information that we might learn, maybe we're like, oh, this study turned out to be debunked, or the way this study was done was not the best, and we can critique those research methods. That's fair. But I don't think that curiosity ever serves us badly or wrongly. Curiosity, in my mind, can only be a helpful thing. And I know people say curiosity killed the cat. That might be true. All my cats are still alive. Touch wood, and God knows they have gotten each other and themselves into some crazy shenanigans over the years. But I want to bring back curiosity. I want to make curiosity sexy and cool and normative again. And I think if you guys start to pay attention to this, you'll notice that curiosity is pretty much fucking decimated, at least in the United States and Canada, over the last while. And it is incredibly frustrating. And even aside from political disagreements, and just as a quick aside, I ended up sharing over on Threads this great quote from Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who is definitely on the more conservative side of things. And regardless of that, like, I don't really have that much of an opinion about her because I don't live in Alberta. But she had this great quote, which was basically like, progressive men love women until they find a conservative woman, and then their opinion is basically shut the fuck up. And I shared that because I thought that was 100% spot on. I've experienced that again and again and again. I've encountered so many men who take so much pleasure in being incredibly vicious to me because of my politics, because I'm not a lefty lady anymore. And it's so interesting to me, the joy that these left-wing progressive men seem to take in being ridiculously cruel to a conservative woman. I've experienced this so many times. My situationship ended because of this, obviously a bunch of other reasons, but this was kind of the kicker for me, was, oh, like you actually secretly probably hate women and are justifying your cruel treatment of me, a woman, because of my politics. I become a non-person. Violence to me becomes impossible. I'm not saying violence happened, it didn't, but just as a kind of rhetorical argument I'm making here, this is kind of what these folks tend to think, and it's really interesting. Like you can't be the recipient of violence because you're a conservative woman and therefore you are a non-person. And the hatred I've experienced as a result of my switcheroo is fascinating to me. But let's just put that aside. So anyway, I posted this on Threads. Some of you guys have probably seen it. And the person who replied is someone I've known in person in Toronto for, since before the pandemic. So he used to run some events at this market in Toronto, and I just like hung out there a bunch and we started chatting, and I was like, hey, I would love to teach some stuff. And so he helped facilitate that for me. So we actually collaborated on me doing some events there, and it was a great time. And I always had really great interactions with him. It was no big deal. It was fine. But, so he, for whatever reason, I guess that popped up in his algorithm, and the things that he said to me on that thread were completely mind-blowing, and we'd always had positive interactions. He had always said, oh, I'm a fan of your podcast, you're so awesome, blah, blah, blah. And all it took was me sharing that thing from Danielle Smith, for a conservative woman in politics in Canada, not even making any commentary on anything else about her, just saying, hey, she said this, I thought it was really great. And that's all it really took for this individual to go completely rabid on me and just say some crazy shit. And I found that really interesting, like this kind of flip of the switch where it just becomes this instantaneous devaluation of the person they're talking to. It's like, oh, you believe different from me, you are different from me, therefore I'm just going to hate on you. And it's really, really interesting because it's not across all difference, it's across particular difference. And I could do a whole different podcast episode about that, so I'm gonna shelf that for now. But because it's interesting, right? It's like these people position difference, there's like good difference and bad difference, and me, I guess I'm a bad difference. But regardless, I have so much to say about that, but I'll leave that to the side for now. But it made me really curious, this interaction, because it did result in me blocking him. And I told him, hey, if you keep talking to me that way, I'm going to block you. Like, I really don't want to, but that's where we're at. And he basically said, hey, I'm quaking in my boots, which is so condescending and so rude. So hilariously, he ended up proving my point about why I thought that was such a valuable quote to share. But what was so interesting for me was that he never seemed to think like, oh, why does Sabrina feel this way? Like, all of his years of knowing me and liking me and my content, it was thrown out the window. He didn't say, oh, I know Sabrina to be pretty reasonable. I like her as a person. She's easy to work with, fun to collaborate with. She must have had some interesting experiences that lead her to feel that this is true. Perhaps I should ask about those. What have you experienced that makes this relatable to you? That would have been a better way for him to go about it. Or he could have just ignored it. We could have talked about it in person or something. But it's interesting to me that doesn't tend to happen. And so when a lack of curiosity about someone else who we fully know in person, like online with strangers is one thing, but people who we fully know in person, to not even be able to have a normal conversation across a perceived difference in opinion, I think is really interesting. So we have this lack of curiosity culture, what I'm calling the death of curiosity. And then we also have that combined with the disposability culture, which is incredibly common on the left, especially. I don't know if it's common on the right, to be honest. Who knows? I'm just on the right by myself. So who knows what that's like. But the lefty groups I was in, all of those people basically have completely disposed of me since I've been talking about, hey, I don't necessarily agree with some of the stuff I used to think. And so that has been really interesting. And so we see all these things kind of congealing, right, and coming together and creating this gel, this like soupiness that we're in. So there's a death of curiosity that I see has been a problem for a while, but it's becoming more and more of a problem lately in North America anyway. Again, for my international folks, please enlighten me and let me know what is the culture like where you are, because I'm curious about that. So we see a death of curiosity. We see disposability culture, and that being seen as the moral right thing to do, which is interesting. And then we also see that combined with this abstraction of people, often strangers, often people we don't know, to a symbol. And sometimes that symbol is going to be their political views, what we assume that is. It can be based on their identity. It can be based on whatever. I've seen people getting discarded because they are Jewish or Israeli or whatever. And again, I'm not going to get into all of that right now. You guys know how I feel about that whole thing. But what we see is this very interesting flattening of the amazing complexity of the world that we live in. We see a flattening of discourse between people. We see a refusal to be curious about ourselves, which I think is a huge problem, and a refusal to be curious about other people, which is also a huge problem. And so all of these things are kind of squishing together to create this really bad vibe, to say the least. And so one quality, to bring it back to the topic, one quality that I tend to really look for in other people when I'm deciding, do I want to work with this person? Do I want to be friends with this person? Do I want to date this person? Can I collaborate with this person? Do I want to share space with this person? One of the main things I ask myself as I'm observing is this person curious? Does this person want to know more? And curiosity in this way is related to a lot of different things. And I think it's going to serve people in literally all areas of life. If you're curious, you're less likely to take things personally, right? Let's say the person that you're dating forgets to take out the trash. Let's just say, like, pretend that that's their like chore or whatever. You get back from work, you notice the garbage is there. Bob did not take out the garbage, even though that was his job. And so who knows, maybe that creates some kind of drama because it misses the time that the garbage truck comes. I don't know. Let's just imagine. If you're not a curious person, and this is the first time this has happened, you might be like, Bob, what the fuck? You're a dick. I hate you. What's wrong with you? Blah, blah, blah. You're never doing this. You're never doing that. Blah, blah, blah. But if you are curious, you're going to be like, hey, Bob, I noticed you didn't take out the thing. You always do. Is there a reason, like, is something going on? Like, are you okay? Have you been really stressed at work? Like, is there something going on? Like, is there too much on your plate right now? Like, let's talk about it. It's an opening, right? And so another example could be, like, let's say at the workplace, and I don't have a normal workplace, obviously. I work for myself. But if I could just come up with an imaginary situation that I can imagine in my circumstances. I'm sure this is different for folks with like normal jobs, but let's just say I had an assistant or something and I had hired them to, I don't know, have a deliverable by a certain day and I wanted it done in a particular format. Let's just say the day didn't happen, like the day came and went and the deliverable did not arrive. The deliverable, let's just say, arrived, I don't know, a few days late and it was wrong. If I was not curious, I would be like, hey, this is totally wrong. Redo it. Also, don't be late. If I was curious, I would say, hey, were my instructions confusing? Was there something about the way that I asked for this that was unclear? I really wanted it like this, but you did it like that. Like, can you help me bridge the gap so that we can communicate better? And I would also ask, did something happen with the timeline? Like, did you have some kind of personal life thing happen, or was there just more work than you anticipated? And notice the difference in these two ways of communicating. But a lot of people might say, oh, that's just a communication thing. No, I think it's a worldview thing. And I think the thing here that's important is the curiosity, the wonder, the opening. Notice how the curious mindset creates an opening for connection. And notice how the closed mindset actually creates an opportunity for rupture and separation, let's say, and becoming less close. And I think this is true across every area of life. And this is partly why I find it so much of a pet peeve and why it just annoys me when I encounter people who aren't curious, which unfortunately happens a lot. And so I've had to learn to just not give a shit and let it go and just decide that I'm not going to try to change this person. I'm just not going to engage with them. I'm not going to have them as a client. I'm not going to be friends with them. I'm not going to date them. If people don't think that there's something they might be missing and that they might be able to learn more about, then likely they're not a good fit for me in my personal life especially. And so I would really encourage you guys to think about this, because I think that curiosity makes everything in life better. It's going to make your relationships better. It's going to make you a better intellectual, a better thinker, a more insightful, rigorous thinker. It's going to make your work and your output more creative. You're going to learn more about yourself. You're going to learn more about other people. And you're also going to spend a lot less time pissed off. Just to speak for myself, I'm never really in a bad mood. Very, very rarely. Most stuff doesn't bother me. It's just water off my back, water off a duck's back, whatever the expression is. It doesn't really bug me. I'm pretty much unbothered most of the time. And I think part of the reason for that is curiosity. Is once we are curious, it's much less likely that we're going to take something personally. We're not going to assume the worst. When we're curious, we also become naturally more at peace, I think, and also more optimistic. Because again, curiosity teaches and trains our mind to be open. Or we're opening rather than closing. We're assuming the best. And who knows, maybe that's proved wrong. But I would rather assume the best and be proved wrong than assume the worst and be proved wrong. Because then we've probably potentially lost out on a really cool new experience, a cool new friend, a cool new date, a cool new job opportunity, whatever. And so when we're curious, we make less negative assumptions about ourselves, a lot less negative assumptions about other people. We don't jump to conclusions. And we're also moving from a collaborative mindset as opposed to an individualistic, fuck everyone sucks kind of mindset, which I realize is an easy one to fall into in the contemporary world, especially if you have a more 9-to-5 typical workplace situation. I get it. But it's also optional. And so I really do feel that curiosity is the solution to everyone's problems. And I mean that jokingly, but also not. I just think it's one of the most important qualities that we can cultivate in ourselves and encourage in others. And I do think it improves everything. It improves everything. So something to think about, you guys. Curiosity. How can we become more curious? I would sort out, how curious are you really? Are there places you could be more curious? Are there reasons you've avoided curiosity in certain parts of your life? Are you afraid of what you will uncover? Is it easier to just assume that you have the answers to everything and that you're right about all of those assumptions? Often it is easier to do that. I get it. Curiosity does require some effort at the beginning, but I also think it is so important. Again, to me, that's the second most important thing. Second only to integrity, which is my most highly held value, probably for obvious reasons. I'm sure I'll get into that in another episode. But for now, I've babbled long enough. So I hope I've convinced you guys of the importance of curiosity. And I just think this is so important. As someone who reads tarot and reads cards and does divination and does magic and works as a mentor and a coach with tons of clients around the world, one of the things that is so important in that work is curiosity. Because the type of questions that we ask in a tarot reading, that is going to be one of the main things that determines how good and useful our reading actually is. One of the main reasons that a lot of people's tarot readings completely flop and are useless or stress them out even more than when they started is because they're asking bad questions. Like, will I ever find love? Or does this guy like me? Or those are bad questions. What's going to happen? That's a bad question. Better questions would be, what am I not seeing about this situation? What am I doing right about this situation? If I take A action, what is likely to happen about this situation? If I take B option, what is likely to happen with this situation? Those are better questions. And this is part of why I love the tarot and teaching the tarot and all of this, is it can teach us to be more in touch with our curiosity and to find those spaces of opening. Okay, so I'm going to leave you guys with that. If tarot is something that you want to learn more about and go deeper in, I do have a few options for that, including my mega tarot without bullshit course, the best tarot course on the internet, in my opinion. Do check it out. You can grab that on my website, sabrinamscott.com. And if you've got any questions about that or would like some one-on-one coaching in conjunction with it, pop me a hello, ceo@sabrinamscott.com, and I'd be happy to help. And I think that's it for now. Go check out my books. I've got 3 of them. I've got a bunch of journals out as well. Just look up Sabrina Scott on Amazon, and I'm sure they'll pop up. And if anyone is in the mood for a reading of any sort or a coaching session about whatever it is you want, do feel free to be in touch. I love hearing from you guys, and I love helping you through big life transitions. All right, y'all, that's it from me for now, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Much love. Thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoy this show, if you find it thought-provoking or healing or just interesting, if you enjoy spending some of your ears with me, I really appreciate if you could give me a nice, happy 5-star review, and please share it with a friend or two who you think would also like it. All right, take care. Till next time. Bye.